Paulo Figueiredo is the grandson of a former president of Brazil and was Brazil's most popular journalist, until the Brazilian Supreme Court declared his reporting misinformation and canceled his passport, froze his bank accounts, and suspended his social media. He says that leftist ideology, anti-Americanism, and Iran and China's growing influence inside Brazil are a threat to the entire Western world. This is a warning that Americans need to start paying attention to what is happening in South America before it's too late.
Right now.
You mentioned the United States exporting bad ideas. As a mom, one of the worst
Goods
ideas.
as well.
Yes, but as a mom,
The
one of the
best.
things that really worries me that we're exporting here from the United States is this whole transgenderism movement. But coupled with intersectionality and DEI, is that something that you're seeing in Brazil as well?
Yes. It spreads through the media and through Hollywood mostly, and the academia as well. So you immediately see subjects that are not even familiar to Brazil being spoken. So for example, someone got on the street and in the main main avenue of São Paulo and wrote Black Lives Matter. And that doesn't make any sense in Brazil. But Brazil never had segregation. Brazil never had any racial issues. Everyone is integrated. We don't even actually have races. But they start repeating the same things that they hear from the United States. So, and the same thing with transgenderism. The Brazilian culture is so against that. And you see that though, because all Latin cultures are against that. The Latinos come to the United States and the Democrats are being crushed in some states because of their crazy woke policies, including that. And still, the media talks about that all the time. We now have a transgender congressman, the global, which are the novellas, our Hollywood, talks about it all the time. So it's a subject that's so weird for the general public, but for the elites, it's a way of signal virtue.
Is this associated with the left in Brazil as well as it is here?
Yeah,
so it's a leftist kind of mentality.
Yeah, the
breakdown of the family and the upside down world,
which is part of their plan.
Yeah,
globally speaking.
Right. Well, speaking of globally, I want to bring up BRICS.
Sure.
Because I think this is where it becomes quite concerning for Americans. So maybe you can explain BRICS a little bit, and also what's imminent. January 2024, the BRICS nations have invited additional nations to join. Iran is one of the countries that might be joining BRICS. And then my understanding is Argentina is rejecting the invitation because they're probably siding with the United States and the West with Javier Milei. But give a little bit of background about BRICS and its significance in the world.
What I think is interesting is that the Financial Times published an article earlier in 2023 saying that they're bragging about how the U.S. government and the Department of State meddled with Brazilian elections to guarantee that Lula was elected. And it was very weird. They said even the CIA putting this is the Financial Times, not some crazy conspiracy theory, saying how much the United States wanted Lula to become president, the Biden administration. And it puzzled me, and I've been asking this question around in the United States a lot. Did they do that because they're stupid, or did they do that because they hate America? And I'm getting mixed answers. No one knows. But the fact is that once Lula got elected, he immediately started anti-American policies. Bolsonaro was the most pro-United States president we had since my grandfather, who was a personal friend of Ronald Reagan. Bolsonaro was the next one that was pro-United States. All the left in Brazil hates America. And it's a very Latin America thing. The anti-imperialists, that's how they call. You see the same words from Hugo Chavez or Maduro's and Fidel Castro and Lula. It's kind of like anti-United States.
They see America as a colonizer. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's an old idea from the Soviet Union that permeates the culture on the left in Brazil. So they're very much against the United States. So they want to oppose the United States a lot in any way they can. So Milei is now siding with the United States, but well, the previous Peronists, they hated America. Same thing in Brazil. Bolsonaro was pro-America. Lula is very much anti-America. And the BRICS is just a way of hurting the United States. So the BRICS is not really a thing. It's not really an institution. It's just a group of people that meet with the bank that is funded by China. But the main thing about the BRICS is it is a way of agreeing to not do trade, for example, in US dollars. So the main goal of Lula now, and Lula already signed 15 treaties with China since he took office, probably more now. The reason why the BRICS can bring India and China on the same table, countries that have different interests, is that the only thing that everyone agrees, Russia, China, India, is that the power of the United States needs to be undermined. They believe in a more multipolar world. And Lula is becoming cozy, very cozy with China, because on top of everything, China brings a lot of money that's good for corruption.
Can you describe what that relationship is like between Lula and the Chinese? Are you seeing more infrastructure investment from China? What are the things that are happening to undermine the United States as well?
So currently Brazil is discussing, well, first of all, China is already very influential in Brazil, and they've been able to become influential even under Bolsonaro's administration. They won a lot of infrastructure contracts. Their influence on the media is unbelievable. They finance most of the Brazilian media groups. They have agreements with them. They own members of Congress with bribe. So the mayor of Rio, the city that I live right now, when he was the mayor before, and I actually worked with him in the past. He was a very smart guy. But when he left office, he became the chairman of BYD, which is a Chinese electric car manufacturing company, which is actually belongs to the China Communist Party, like most companies behind the scenes. And now he's the mayor of Rio again. He was a lobbyist for BYD, and now he's the mayor of the most important, arguably, city in Brazil. So their tentacles in Brazil are huge. But with Lula, Bolsonaro tried to create some barriers. The 5G cell phone contracts in Brazil, Bolsonaro tried to stop this. Not completely successful, but he tried to stop Huawei from winning these contracts. He was only partially successful because he ended up winning a lot of it. And we all know Huawei is a facade for spying that the Chinese Communist Party uses to spy on people around the world. With Lula, they can do whatever they want now.
The Chinese.
They can do whatever they want. Lula sees China as the alternative to the United States, to the point that for 150 years, the United States were the #1 commercial party of Brazil. And then Lula, during his first term, China became #1. And now China does almost twice as much commerce with Brazil. And a lot of that is because of the incompetence of the Department of State. Because think about it. What's geopolitics? So Clausewitz used to say that politics is, the war is politics. It's the continuation of politics, right? That's what he used to say, the Prussian general. And geopolitics is pretty much you preparing for a global war. Mm-hmm. And what do you need in a war? You need people to fight the war. You need food for these people. You need iron for the war machines. And you need energy. So Brazil is the 6th largest population in the world. Brazil is the 4th largest food producer in the world. Brazil is the #2 iron ore producer in the world. And Brazil produces more energy than most OPEC countries and dominates nuclear energy technology. The Chinese understand that, the importance of Brazil from a geopolitical perspective. The Americans don't see they do.
Do you think Americans are retreating from having a stronger relationship with Brazil? Is there something that you think the U.S. could do or should be doing in order to strengthen that important relationship?
Of course, Brazil is culturally one of the closest countries to the United States. We all share the same values in general. We all share the same culture. In a weird world, where all the cultures are different from America right now. The Chinese is completely different. Indians, very different. Middle Easterns, very different. The Africans are Brazil is, we watch the same movies. And that's how America was always the good guys in the movies, right? Back before Hollywood turned crazy. But culturally, Christians, we have a presidential system that's very much copied from the United States. So and the US can have everything. So in this coupling process that the United States is doing with China, I think one lesson that the world learned is that doing commerce with China is not the same thing as doing commerce with the United Kingdom or Brazil, people that share your values. It's not the same. And I think the United States could do a lot more with Brazil. Well, let's say you want your pharmaceutical companies to be in China, or do you want them to be in Brazil? They could be in Brazil. We have the technology, we have the people, we have all that. And I think once we have an administration in the United States that loves America, that want the best for the American interests, they should look at Brazil as a possible partner. And I hope Lula will be gone by then.
Two holes on both sides. That's part of the problem. What about Iran? What is Brazil's relationship with the Iranians? And if the Iranians do come to the table, which they seem like they are, joining BRICS, and what does that look like? Are the Iranians having a strong influence on the Brazilians now?
Well, we had the Iranian ship docking in Brazil earlier in 2023. And
why?
Being resupplied, because Brazil let them. The Brazilian government let them. And they even threw a party on the ship. It was the weirdest thing in the world. But also Brazil inviting Iran. And that's all part of the anti-United States policy more than anything. Even the position against Israel is primarily the position against the United States. So the stronger guy, the most important guy on Lula's foreign policy, was, let me call it Lula's Anthony Blinken. He wrote the preface of a book exhorting the political importance of Hamas. There's a gentleman called Celso Amorim.
The political importance of Hamas.
Yes. So Lula, it's not new. The position of Lula anti-Israel is not new. So Lula's party was always openly against Israel and pro-Palestine, whatever that is. And that's where Brazil stands now. The foreign policy of Lula's administration is a disaster. Most of his policies are. The economy is not doing well. Brazil in 2020 is expected to grow 2.5% to 3% in 2023, which you would say, wow, this is good. No. It's because the agro-business, which the crops and all the meat and all that production in Brazil is going to grow 15%. And they represent 30% of the country's economy. But Lula is very hostile to the agribusiness in Brazil. So the rest of the countries, the manufacturing, the service, the construction, everything is going down the drain.
What is your reaction to what is happening in Argentina right now? So you have a neighboring country that is pretty much taking the exact opposite on virtually every single thing that President Lula is doing in Brazil. What do you know about Javier Milei and his intentions?
Well, I think his intentions are great because the Argentinians had enough. I hope we don't reach that point, because in Latin America, what we look at is that we look at Venezuela. And that's a destination we don't want to reach. Disaster. It's a disaster. And every country, and people in Brazil say, we don't want to become another Venezuela.
So they know.
They know. Brazil had received, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Venezuela. So we know. The problem is, and Argentina was going that way very fast. Right now, Argentina has 150% inflation. Right now, Argentina has roughly half of the population under the poverty line. So they're starving, literally. And with all that, it looked at one point that they were going on the Venezuelan way. So we're all going towards Venezuela. Brazil is here. Argentina is here, because Argentina was a great country before the left. They were very important. Now Argentina is almost irrelevant. to the point that Argentina is 1/4 of Brazilian economy. The state of São Paulo is same size as Argentina in every possible way you can imagine. They're way less influential in South America. So the country was really in a bad trajectory towards Venezuela. And we look at that and we say, well, if they can do it, maybe we can change our route as well, our course, and maybe we can stop us from becoming a Venezuela. It was like a step. Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela. And the problem is that I think Milei is going to face a lot of resistance from the establishment. But the establishment is way stronger in Latin American countries than it is in the US.
How are the Brazilians looking at Argentina right now? Are they saying, okay, this guy is crazy, let him ruin Argentina? Or are they saying, we kind of wish we had somebody like him saving us?
I think we have both. I think the left, and don't get me wrong, there is, although I don't think Lula won the election fairly, I'm not sure there was fraud. I'm sure it wasn't fair and there was no transparency. But I'm not part of the people that said, well, Lula had no votes, they frauded everything. I don't believe that. I don't believe that was the case. I do know that Lula has a lot of votes, a lot of electors. And I think they are not happy with Milei in Argentina. But the majority of the country, slightly, is looking at Milei with hope. And we're all curious as well to see what he can do.
Right. Any final words of hope, specifically when it comes to Brazil and this important relationship that Americans need to have with this massive country south of us?
I think there are two important things. The first important thing is Americans need to start looking at Brazil because Brazil matters a lot. And I'm not saying that because I'm Brazilian. I'm saying that because I live in the United States. This is my country, the country of my two daughters. So if we want a safer world and where the Americans' interests prevail, we need to take a closer look at Brazil. If we don't, the Chinese will. This is the first thing. The second thing is, look at us because we're not that different. In a sense that anything that happened in Brazil can happen here. So what? Right now we have roughly 6 or 5 Supreme Conservative originalist Supreme Court justices. What would you think it would happen if the Democrats could pack the court? Or these guys are going away sometime. Do you think your court would be that different from us? Look at New York. Look at Alvin Bragg. Look at all the George Soros prosecutors that you have around the country. So we're not that different. Your media is just as bad as ours. Your universities are gone. Hollywood became a place of madness. The Democratic Party is becoming completely radicalized. It's not moderate anymore. So, and the freedom of speech is still holding in this country, but not that much.
By a
thread. And if America goes down, it's gone. I can't go anywhere. There's nowhere else to go. So
that's why we have to fight.
The First Amendment needs to be sacred in this country. We should never negotiate free speech, because once free speech is gone, everything follows. So, and that's why they're attacking free speech in Brazil more than anything. So you have the First Amendment, and if the First Amendment falls, all you have is the Second Amendment, and we don't want that.
There is a movement within even the conservative right that is very focused on just America. You know, build that wall, secure the borders, focus inward, you know, protect our Constitution, but don't get involved with other wars or other issues around the world. And I don't think we need to get into the issue of Israel and Ukraine and some of the, you know, actual wars that are happening right now. But when it comes to the topic of Brazil, for example, what is the risk that you see in isolationism? Because it seems like China is taking advantage of the narrative of isolationism. And they're kind of saying, well, if America wants to retreat and leave a vacuum, we'll happily step in and take over and, you know, do a little bribery and a little investments and, you know, really take advantage of us retreating. Can the United States survive with an isolationist mentality? I wish the two of us could even sit with somebody like Ronald Reagan and ask him about that, because I think he had a vision for understanding what communism and Marxism is about. A vision that I think sadly we have not been able to teach this next generation how important it is to pay attention to the world's arena and not just what is happening within our country. And just what are your remarks on it?
Well, it's a problem that American conservatives faced since the beginning, right? The conservatives didn't want to get into the World War II.
Yeah.
And it's good when you have two sides that are having a good discussion. So you can have liberals and conservatives having the problem right now is that the left went nuts. So there's no discussion anymore.
Right.
I mean, technically speaking, I believe most people on the left are out of their mind. Crazy, meaning they lost contact with reality. So that's why the discussion is so hard. But on the point of the isolation is, America needs to take care of America first, no question about it. But you need friends. It's the same thing with your life. You need to take care of your life, right? You need to take care of your job and all that. But you never lose sight of two things. One is that you need friends because you can't be by yourself. And second is that you need to help people that are not in a good situation. And I think that's very present in the American culture. Americans mind their own business in first place, but they try to have a social life and they help, they donate, it's a very charitable country. And I think the international policy of the United States should be the same way. And Ronald Reagan understood that a lot. And I say that because I remember the stories that my grandfather used to say about how Reagan helped him, and that was greatly appreciated. What it's weird is that the lefts in America, they are smart. They're smart in the point that I think because of ideological reasons, they actually have a network with countries in South America. They do meetings here in the US. George Soros funds most of the bad causes in Brazil. Same Bill Gates. If you look at it, look at what the Open Society donates, where they donate money in Brazil.
Where?
Well, to abortion, drugs, the same thing as in the US. So the left has a network. The right is so concerned with the problems within the country that they have zero. It's hard to even have members of Congress, of the United States Congress, listening to what's going on in Brazil. And trust me, I've been there in person, talking with members of Congress, trying to ask them, look, could you guys have hearings about this? It's not only that, your administration helped Lula to get in power, so you're responsible for the situation of my country. You helped it happening. It's not only that you didn't interfere. So the left is very good at it, the right is not, and this is something we need to improve.
The U.S. gives significant foreign aid to Brazil.
It does?
Do Brazilians know that? I mean, I'm sitting here as an American hearing that Brazilians are calling us imperialist and colonizers while we're sending them billions of dollars. I mean, comes across pretty ungrateful.
The leftists do that. They hate America. And they will gladly take your money. But that doesn't mean they will like it. Or us. I should say like us, because I'm here. Right? It's my country too.
Right. Well, you know, the world is becoming a crazier place, but I appreciate sitting down with someone who can explain a little bit of it to me. And, you know, we just need to keep fighting for freedom of speech. That's what it's about.
Thing.
Yeah.
I think if America spreads bad virus, places like this are the ones producing the cures.
Yeah. Well,
congratulations.
Appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Peraí, desculpe interromper esse vídeo, mas é que eu continuo censurado pelo STF.
Além deles cancelarem o meu passaporte, congelarem todas as minhas contas bancárias e bloquearem as minhas redes, agora eles também querem proibir os meus vídeos no Brasil. Você pode continuar me acompanhando seguindo o meu segundo canal, que é o canal de cortes. E se quiser ter acesso a todas as minhas postagens para sempre, deve se inscrever no meu Locals, que funciona de uma forma parecida com o Facebook ou o Twitter. Todos os links estão aqui na descrição. Entra lá, senão você vai ficar desinformado e aí eles vão vencer. Façam o tal do triplo C. Curta, comenta, porque a integração do chat ajuda muito, e compartilhe. Você pode fazer essas 3 coisas que ajudam o algoritmo a aparecer. Mas eu não tô brincando não, pessoal. Dá uma paradinha agora de 1 segundo e clica no joinha, que às vezes essa pessoa já está acostumada a ouvir isso. Não. É importante que você faça isso, porque se você não fizer, inclusive atrapalha o vídeo. Parece que o vídeo é menos relevante. Então...
Também faço aqui o meu convite da minha parte para você assinar a plataforma do Fio Diário e começar a acompanhar uma plataforma realmente livre e que vai dar oportunidade das pessoas falarem o que pensam e dizerem a verdade. Se você não incentivar um veículo de mídia independente como esse, quem vai fazer por você?